Hey guys, welcome back to Mountain Murders. Heather here. I am flying solo. That's right, no Dylan. But I wanted to make sure that we were able to get you out some bonus content to all the patrons out there who support us so graciously with their monthly donations on Patreon. And if you haven't checked out this week's regular Mountain Murders episode, we talk about William Wickline Jr., the butcher. Now, he was a prison slaughterhouse butcher. Pretty gory case, so go check that out. Of course, you can find that wherever you stream the podcast. So this episode is actually going to be a little bit of a departure from what we normally do. Now, typically we focus on true crime, but I thought it might be fun to get away from that a little bit and talk about some of the Appalachian folklore and legends, maybe some old superstitions. Now, I know that lifestyles have changed over the years. There's lots of, new people that have moved into the area, so a lot of the old traditions aren't being passed down. A lot of shifting perceptions. Back in the day, there was, I feel like, quite a bit more focus on, supernatural forces, that people genuinely thought of these forces as, serious threats, and now they're pretty harmless. So the tall tale is kind of dying out. So I kind of wanted to keep this going a little bit more for you because without that embedded folklore of the region, we are no longer using our imagination. We don't have to worry about trying to keep witches out of our house or try to keep the devil off our back kind of thing. So, these superstitions kind of falling by the wayside. Like the act of throwing a pinch of salt over the left shoulder was considered good luck. And it was a way to ward off the devil back in the 1800s. So, just little things like that are kind of funny and quirky, but people just don't do these things anymore. I guess everybody has a little bit of something superstitious maybe that they believe in. If you got a pair of lucky socks you wore to a football game, maybe a certain lipstick is a charm for a good date, that kind of thing. And then, of course, there's always the, what I call wives' tales. A lot of these old mountain traditions that are recalled from, usually you hear them from your grandma, that kind of thing, passed down, and usually not rooted in any kind of, real science, but still kind of interesting, and a lot of people buy into this stuff. Like the notion that spilling salt brings bad luck actually dates back to the 15th century. So if you look closely, and this is something I didn't know about, but if you look closely at that Leonardo da Vinci painting, The Last Supper, you're going to see that there's a pile of spilled salt near the crook of Judas's arm, knocked over by the traitor's elbow. So that's how spilling salt is associated with bad fortune and corruption, and the action is even said to invite the devil, even though there's a lot that's superstitious and not really based in any kind of fact. That's why the throwing the salt over your shoulder is supposed to help you out, because it is believed that the devil himself stands over your left shoulder and that throwing salt that way will blind him and prevent him from taking over your body if you accidentally invited him in when you spilled the salt. Well, damn, if that's what it takes to invoke the devil, then maybe I should go around spilling some salt, because that actually sounds kind of cool. So one of the old wives' tales that I grew up hearing is that terrible things come in threes. Now, this is definitely something that I've heard from multiple people throughout my life. Now, pretty much anything can come in threes if you want to frame it a certain way. And perhaps it's because it's so easy to convince yourself that these bad things come in threes. I guess after all, this notion has been explored every time a celebrity passes away. It's just a superstition that's really widespread and believed in. And what was it, 2016 was the year that all of those old rock stars, it's like everybody died that year. And everybody was like, oh, it all comes in threes. So there you go. Now, an old wives' tale that you've probably heard is that if your ears are ringing, then that means somebody is talking about you and that they're saying things behind your back. So there you go. Another old wives' tale, and I wasn't aware of this one, but it's pretty interesting, is that if you carry around an acorn, you're going to stay forever young. Now, of course, there's no special healing powers in these nuts. You know what I'm saying? But many people believe regardless that carrying one around is going to keep you healthy. Why, you may ask? Well, the oak tree is known for its unusually long life. And if you haul around the seed of this tree, people hope to achieve that same longevity. So I don't know, maybe instead of keeping that acorn on your person and hoping that you're going to live forever, maybe you should just put down the cheeseburger and get your ass on a treadmill. That's my suggestion to you anyway. Of course, a lot of people, superstition, if you see a penny, you pick it up on the sidewalk, it's going to bring you good luck. What's that old saying? Find a penny, pick it up, all day long, you'll have good luck. So I guess a long time ago, it was thought that medals were gifts from God sent down as a form of protection. And seeing as pennies are made of copper, metal, the currency became associated with good luck. Now, that is just a simple old wives' tale for you. So I thought some of those were pretty fun. And, hey, science is no match for these myths, right? Some of the other interesting things that I thought I'd talk about tonight are a few of the legends. Now, I put a post out on Facebook the other day and asked people to share their favorite, local kind of folklore legends. We got some interesting feedback on that for sure. So I've picked a few here. I have curated the ones that I thought were most interesting. Do you like how I use that word, curated? Yeah, it makes me sound important, right? Oh my gosh, if you guys could see me now, I'm ridiculous. I've been trying to record this podcast for an hour, and I keep just feeling like I sound ridiculous, and I'll turn it off, and then I text Dylan. He's at work. And I'm like, oh, I sound terrible. And he's like, no, I'm sure you sound fine. But I'm in bed, I'm talking to you guys, and I'm wearing a muumuu. You know what I'm talking about? Like a house dress, like what grandmas wear, buttons up the front. Yeah, I'm wearing this one, and it's from the 60s, and it has zebras on it, and it's so tacky, but it is the most comfortable, amazing thing I've ever had on in my whole life. So here I am, lounging in bed, trying to talk to you guys and record this podcast, and apologize for my informal attire, but still got the message out there for you, right? Yeah, so this is what happens when I record by myself. I really need a partner, and unfortunately we don't have Dylan tonight, right? So bear with me. Local legends. So this is one that takes place here in Western North Carolina, and I've actually never experienced this phenomena, but I would love to. So I'm thinking maybe it would make a great road trip. And if you're interested in taking a road trip, I'll even give you directions here in a few minutes on how you can scope this out. So what I'm talking about is the Brown Mountain Lights. This is a story that I've grown up with. When I was a kid, there were all these North Carolina ghost stories written by a lady named Nancy Roberts that we had in my elementary school library, and I would check out these Nancy Roberts books. And the Brown Mountain Lights always prominent in the North Carolina ghost stories. Always thought it was so fascinating. And you may be asking, what are the lights? Well, I'm about to tell you. Settle down. So for centuries, the dark skies above Brown Mountain, North Carolina are where eerie ghost lights have been spotted. Now, to many eyewitnesses, the lights appear like glowing orbs, pulsating and hovering over the ridgeline above the mountains. And then they just sort of suddenly disappear, or they seem like they explode, but without a sound. Sounds pretty fucking cool, right? It's like it being at a Motley Crue show, amazing pyrotechnics. Anyway, one of the first reported sightings of the lights, and I guess this is an official report, dates back to 1913. There was a fisherman who claimed to see these red lights glowing above the mountain. But the story actually traces back centuries before. So the Cherokee have a Brown Mountain Lights legend. There was a battle between the Cherokee and the Catawba tribes, and they claimed that the lights were from women who had lost their lovers in the battle, and that they were, basically combing the mountain looking for their lost lovers who were killed in these battles. So, that's a really old story associated with the lights. In 1922, the U.S. Geological Society investigated the lights and claimed that it was headlights from cars and passing trains. However, this was immediately debunked because there was a flood in 1916 which wiped out roads and bridges, and people still reported seeing the lights in the night sky. So, hey, you guys are wrong. Couldn't be the logical explanation. Now, there's another more romanticized story, which these southern stories like this kind of make me gag a whole lot, but I'll mention it anyway. There's a story of a slave searching for his master, and that he's out with a lantern looking for his master who was killed in a hunting accident or something. Those stories. Anyway, there have been some scientists with Appalachian State University that have attempted to capture and study the lights extensively, but they cannot make a scientific determination about what exactly is causing this light phenomena. There have been theories that there have been certain gases maybe released, but they just, every time they try to do studies and tests, they're not finding anything to support these theories. But if you want to see the Brown Mountain Lights, the best time is reportedly in the fall, between September and early November. You can observe the Brown Mountain Lights from the overlook on the Blue Ridge Parkway at milepost 301. And there's even a bluegrass song written about the lights. And if you stick around, I'll play it at the end of this episode. So another mountain legend, which has made headlines and even been turned into films, takes place in 1966, November 12th, 1966, in a town called Clendenin, West Virginia, which is very close to Point Pleasant. And that's important. I'll get to that in a few minutes. These grave diggers, as if that's not creepy enough, actually, I think being a grave digger would be a cool job, because if you think about it, you're working solo. I'm very antisocial. I don't want to have to deal with people. And you're in a cemetery, which is the most peaceful, quiet place on earth. You probably have your little mini excavator out there just digging holes. I think that'd be a cool-ass job. So anyway, these grave diggers are out working, and they claim that they see this winged man creature lift off from a tree and fly above their heads. He's just like, caw, caw, hanging out. Yeah, this kind of just reminds me of your redneck cousin Larry, who's had too many Miller Lights, and he's up in a tree like, hey, y'all, watch this, and tries to take flight, and then he just breaks his leg and ends up in a cast for 8 weeks. Yeah, well, that's not what happened here, but I'm getting off on a tangent. So grave diggers see this winged creature. Of course, they freak out. It was super scary. Well, it was about 3 days later, there was a young couple driving near an old World War II TNT plant. It's something out of a damn cartoon. An old ammunition, not the old ammunition factory. So anyway, this couple is out driving, they're near this World War II TNT plant, probably about to go necking, I'm going to guess, because it's an abandoned factory. And it's about 5 miles north of this Point Pleasant area, when they see what they describe as a large flying man with 10-foot wings and red glowing eyes. So the couple, freaked out, immediately go to the newspaper with their story. And thus, dun dun dun, the Mothman was born. Now, in the following week, after this story of the Mothman was published, there were 8 more sightings of the Mothman. And for a year, sightings were being reported all over West Virginia. So in 1967, just before Christmas, the Silver Bridge collapsed, killing 46 people. And the Silver Bridge connects this Point Pleasant, West Virginia, over to Ohio. And some people claim that the Mothman appeared at the bridge just before the structure crashed. And he's kind of become known as the Harbinger of Doom. What a great name. I want to be the Harbinger of Doom. When people see me, they're just automatically oh no, bridges are going to collapse and people are going to burn and plagues of locusts will appear. Yes. Okay, so moving along here, that's a pretty interesting legend. And again, West Virginia. So we started with the Brown Mountain Lights. Now we've moved on up into West Virginia, and now we're back to Western North Carolina to talk about a local Cherokee legend. Now, this is actually one that I've grown up with, and if you ever go to the historic Cherokee Indian Museum, they actually have a whole exhibit on this story, and it's a great legend. A lot of local people will tell you about it. So according to this Cherokee legend, many years ago, this is before the Cherokee settled into the region, there was a race of small, bearded white men who lived in the mountains.